Welcome to the Saturday Conversation series. I'm Reverend Laura, and I'm here to share today with an ongoing conversation of Ernest Holmes and his work and how that has come through. And we're kind of connecting here with the Science of Mind archives, and which is a really wonderful experience because the archives in and of themselves are a huge catalog and library and just a wonderful place to go and delve and see and understand the depth of Ernest Holmes' work and the breadth of the work and how many hundreds and thousands of writings and papers and lectures and courses and books and all sorts of things that he had written that are in the archives. And so I just want to center us in here for a moment. That's what I really want to do before I continue, because there's a lot of hustle and bustle going on. It's a couple of weeks before Christmas here, and whatever it is that you're doing, wherever you are in the world, I'm here in the UK and I can feel the energy of this. So let's center in with ourselves and just take a moment to breathe and to be fully present, and to allow this time of wonder and curiosity and conversation and introspection as we delve into these teachings even more profoundly. Just take a moment to breathe here, breathing in the light and the love and the power and the presence that is here, and exhaling, knowing that this power and presence is always here, always readily available. And I know that as we join here, heart to heart, mind to mind, that there is an intention set to unfold and unravel into a deeper knowing of who and whose we are. So I know that this time together is blessed, it is sacred, and that the light and the wonder and the intelligence, the infinite intelligence that is always here shining through, speaks through, is heard, and is realized more profoundly in our time together, in this sharing, in this unraveling, in this knowing of these beautiful writings of the work of Ernest Holmes, Dr. Ernest Holmes. So with this gratitude for New Thought Media Network, for us being here right now, the intention of a yes and the light that is pouring through, I let this be and let this go and enter into this glorious portal, this sacred portal of love. With that love, knowing that all is God and all is good, and so it is. I love that, and I love being here and being able to do this and to share. So for the past year here on New Thought Media Network, we have been, can you see with my, do you like my background, by the way, Reverend Sherry? Thank you very much for the background. We have been adventuring through the Science of Mind textbook, a philosophy of faith and a way of light, created, written, and unraveled by Dr. Ernest Holmes. We as a group have been working on this week by week, sharing and conversing with you and getting a deeper insight for ourselves. And that the book came to, we got to the end of the book, I think it was in August or September. And since then, we've been working more deeply by delving into the Science of Mind archives and looking through, just picking out pieces and things that inspire to share with you and with ourselves here. And so this is what I'm doing today. And welcome here. If you're here joining, then please do put your name in. This is a conversation. This is a conversation that really relies upon you being willing to ask a question, to share your insights, and to put your comments in so that we can just talk through this and get clearer on certain ideas and concepts of these New Thought Science of Mind teachings. So for today, I was really inspired. I have been inspired by this all for the last while, actually. And yet, hello, Wayne, welcome here. Hello, Starshine. Yes, welcome to this. this conversation today. So I'm really inspired today to talk about habits and to talk about change and to talk about money. The reason that I'm doing this, rather than delving into something maybe more festive or more in alignment with this time of light that we are in, with so many beautiful rituals and faith traditions shining their light right now. And I just thought, yes, there's a lot of this going on, and I do have it as my background. Thank you, Reverend Sherry. And I just wanted to just drop in here with some teachings from Ernest Holmes about habits and about money. Money is something that is a topic that has been known to prod and and bring us into a space of, oh my gosh, it actually is quite an activating topic for so many of us, more so than relationships or intimacy. Money can be one of those a topic that really brings up a lot for us. And so, especially at this time of year, when we may be feeling that we're pulled in different directions with the idea that we are having to provide or be the provider, or to purchase gifts, or to make Christmas really prosperous and to have the money for that, it can bring up a lot of feelings of lack if we feel that we don't have that or that we aren't ready for it. And that can let us bring us into a space of not feeling enough as a being of light. How can we not ever feel enough? We are all already enough. In the mind of the divine, we're absolutely more than enough. And we are also, in our humanness, we are a combination of the habits that we decide to take on board, and of the thoughts and beliefs and feelings that create those habits. To make a change, it isn't always simple. There are many teachers nowadays that have so many teachings around habits. I've been reading Atomic Habits lately by James Clear, a great book. And yet, in spirituality, we know that there is one great big habit that we can take on board to open our hearts to the divine, to God, Goddess, God, to this thing itself, to know that it loves us always. And in our humanness, we can help ourselves by creating systems for ourselves with no pressure, to make changes, to bring us closer to the idea of becoming more attached to our spiritual practice, especially at this time of year. I think the Christmas season can bring so many ideas of how we should be doing things or how we shouldn't be doing things, that for many of us, we feel that we just aren't capable. And there can be a habitual change of thinking and feeling that can really support us in this time, in any time. So I'm going to bring up a document that I found. I've just got a little. Yes, Wayne. My own natural energy. Yield money. Well, money is a symbolism of spirituality. It is spiritual in itself. So yes, there is no separation between us and money. That's purely in our own minds. If we deny ourselves knowing of the light of who we are, we're denying ourselves knowing the fullness of prosperity that is here for us right now in this moment. I'm going to add this to the stream as I found this in the science. Now, I wonder if I can make it larger. In the Science of Mind archives. And this has been written by Ernest Holmes, How Habits Are Formed, written by Ernest Holmes on the 29th of June, 1951. So it's not very Christmassy. And yet, What a great thing to be able to explore this a little bit more fully and more deeply right now. Because as we're entering into a whole new cycle of a new year, so many of us make new resolutions for the new year. And for me, I like to say, okay, I'm setting up a new system for my life, regardless of whether it's the 1st of January or the middle of August. We can make a change in the now. We don't need to have a new year as the reason for making the change. We can do this now. We can do this in any moment. That's why I was really inspired to bring this in. Let's not wait and keep it out there. Let's delve a little bit more deeply and decide to make some changes for our lives in the now, in this moment of now. Ernest Holmes, as heard on this thing called Life on Sunday, the 29th of June, 1951, How Habits Are Formed. So he starts by telling us that really he wants us to know how to think in such a manner that our lives will be happy and successful. Ernest Holmes talks a lot about happiness and success. Throughout the Science of Mind textbook, these two words are in here a lot. He talks about spirituality, practical spirituality, as a way of bringing us to happiness and success. And of course, this is what we want for our lives. We want to live a fulfilled life, one that feels meaningful and joyful and successful. And we get to choose the definition of success. What does that really mean for us? For some, it may mean a financial wealth and stability. For some, it may mean freedom. And of course, this is the fifth spiritual of the Science of Mind principles, that Ernest Holmes knows a world where we are living in complete freedom within our own minds and our own hearts, knowing that heaven is, the kingdom of heaven is within. So he starts by saying most of us have felt that our lives are governed by our conscious thoughts, but it's now believed that almost 90% of our lives are controlled by habit patterns of thoughts. And we know from not only from New Thought teachings, from neuroscience, from quantum physics, we know that habits are being formed in our subconscious, and we are holding on to these. We don't even know what the mental patterning often of the continuum of these habits are in our own minds and why we do it. And this is why spiritual mind treatment is so powerful, because it can assist us with getting to the mental cause of what really is happening and to dissolve that mental cause. When we see our lives and we don't like what we're seeing as the outpicturing of our lives, we can look more deeply within ourselves and understand that there are mental patterns that are supporting what it is that we are not liking or that isn't working or supporting our lives fully. And those patterns are habitual. We keep them going. The matter of habits relates to almost every phase of our lives. And if we're going to get the most out of our mental tools, let's understand how thought patterns are established and what kind of thought patterns are best for us to live by. And we need to understand here that we have the spiritual realm, we have the physical realm, and in the midst of these two, we have the mental realm. And so in this mental realm is where we can get out of our own way. We can we are the bloated nothingness, as Emerson states it. And until we realize that and get out of our own way, then we can be at one with the at one-ment and know that the habit is something that's created within our mental patterning. So he's talking here about how this is thought, and habits are thought patterns, and they're different from our conscious thinking. So he goes into examples here of how we act instantly when we have a cue. And often a time, as this has been really shown and looked at in research, is that a cue can be something that instigates a habit that we don't even know consciously that we're doing. And there are these mental cues that we are not even aware of, and they trigger us into a habit, then that habit may not be sustaining something that is supportive for our lives. And so much research has been done on this in the last, in the last few years. And when Ernest Holmes was writing this in 1951, he gives an example about this of an outstanding psychologist of our day. This is in his time, experimented with a patient by shining a light in front of his eyes. At the same time that the light was turned on to make the pupils of the eyes contract, a bell was rung. This was repeated many times, and each time the light was placed in front of the patient's eyes, the bell was rung. And each time this happened, the pupils of the eyes contracted. After this had been repeated a sufficient number of times to have trained the person to react in a certain way, another step was taken. The patient was given a switch which controlled both the light and the bell, which he held in his hand. When the doctor would say the word contract, the patient was close his hand, squeeze the switch, which turned on the light and rang the bell. When this was done, the pupils of his eyes again contracted. This is, we know that we are one, and we know there's no separation between anything, and we know that we are responding and reacting. And this is like, he is saying here that the mind and body are one. Of course, we know this, and this is what our teachings show. And what I really love about this is that he is going to scientific research. Even then, in 1951, Ernest Holmes loved science. It is the science, this is the science of mind. He was saying that he was looking forwards for a day when science and spirituality, religion are one and come to a greater understanding as one thing, rather than this idea that there is a division between any of it, when there isn't. So he was a great one for pulling up science and giving it as examples. And this is one of these examples. After this was done enough to have established a habit, the light and the bell were both taken away, as was also the switch. Then an interesting thing was noticed in the experiment. The doctor would just say to the patient, contract, and the patient would close his hand as instructed by the pupils of his eyes, and they would contract. To make the experiment even more complete, the patient was then told not to close his hand, while the doctor simply said the word contract. And at this command, the pupils of his eyes would contract. Up to this point, there is one thing we should notice about these experiments. They have all been built and carried out on a basis of suggestion. But here, it seems to me, is the place where the most revealing part of the power of mind enters into the experiment. Finally, the doctor simply sat down by his patient and thought the word contract, and the pupils of the patient's eyes contracted. Let's just breathe into this. Because not only is the power in our own mind, this is Ernest Holmes showing scientifically, from a spiritual perspective, the one mind. And this is what Phineas Quimby knew as his teachings went from mesmerism and hypnotism into divinity and knowing the Christ consciousness and knowing the teachings of Jesus and knowing how this one mind is operating at all times, how God is operating at all times as the one mind, with the one mind, as the mind is an aspect of God. So isn't this powerful? How we don't even know that we are creating these habits because we are a sum of suggestion. Now, the piece that really that really comes to me from this is what Ernest Holmes calls race suggestion, mass suggestion. And I'm going to read this from the Science of Mind textbook. His definition of race suggestion. And when he talks of race, at this time when the book was written, he's really meaning the masses, every single thought that has ever been thought that is held in mass consciousness. And he defines this by saying in the glossary at the back of the Science of Mind textbook that mass or race consciousness is human beliefs operating through the mentality of the individual. The tendency to reproduce what the race or the mass has thought and experienced. This race suggestion is a prolific source of disease. These accumulated subjective tendencies of the human race are operated through any person who is receptive to them. So if we feel into this in relation to habits and habit formation, we can see that we are each receptive to suggestions that are coming at us without us even knowing. We know that flicking through social media, scrolling through YouTube, scrolling through Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all of them. We know that it only takes a split second for our brain to take that information in. And if we're intentionally doing that all day, not all day maybe, but at times in the day, if we're doing it regularly in the day, then what we are doing is taking on and embodying the mental suggestion into our mental atmosphere. Mental atmosphere. Mental atmosphere. Our mental atmosphere is the mental emanation of anything, any person or any place. Everything has some kind of mental atmosphere. And of course, spirit is involving in us and through us and evolving. So we are the microcosm of that. As we involve ourselves with life and we bring that evolves through us, if we're taking on suggestion that there isn't enough money, that there's lack, that money doesn't grow on trees, that money is the root of all evil, that we have to struggle, we have to suffer, it has to be hard, it has to be difficult. If this is the suggestion that we are taking on, a lot of the time, unwillingly, we don't realize that it's happening. It's a suggestion. And life is very good at suggesting these things to us. And we get very, very good at seeking out and backing up these suggestions within ourselves so that we feel better about ourselves because we're in a place of lack or we can't afford something. We make excuses because that kind of takes us off the hook. So habits. Let's go back to this. Ernest Holmes here in this paper, 1951, think how we react to such words. And I'm going to change these words. Lack, not enough money, poverty, hardship, struggle. all of the words that may be lodged somewhere in our subconscious because we may have taken those words or the idea of those words on in our formative years. And let's contrast these words to how differently we respond when we hear words like prosperity, abundance, there is enough, there is infinite flow, God is my source, God is my source and supply. I am the supply, I am the money. And he says in each case, you see, these are commands that we have learned to react to in a certain way. It's little wonder that Jesus said, the words I speak unto you, they are the spirit and they are the life. So you see how powerful this is? Because not only do we respond to the words that we hear, that we are hearing, or the suggestion that we are hearing, or taking on board through the five senses, see, smell, hear, taste, touch, that we have these auto cues that are, if you like, they're like the ideas that we have, the concepts that we have, and the auto cues that are just, they're like the bell that will bring us to a place of, yes, that's right, until we decide that it isn't, until we make a conscious decision. And this is why spiritual mind treatment, affirmative prayer, the use of affirmations, not just once in a while, no, the use of constant use of affirmations become our super tools. They become the way that we can allow ourselves to get closer to the truth of who and whose we are, where then we override and dissolve any idea of the opposing factor of that. So we create a new habit, a greater habit for our lives. We intentionally turn to the divine as our new habit. We turn to God. If there are any questions or comments, then please share in here, because I'm speaking this from my perspective and from my idea. And I know that you have ideas that are so valid right now, and anything that you pop into the chat, into the comments, is going to be great, because it's going to help me, it's going to help others to see that there are so many perspectives of this idea of habits. So yes, Ernest Holmes goes on to say here that the reason that anyone reacts to a subconscious command or a habit is because we have accepted the command without reservation. We have taken it into the very depths of our mind. And now that we have done this, the thought pattern takes control and works for us. We don't even have to think about it. Just like the individual that he gave the example of before, where the bell was removed and the command was removed, the cue and the command were removed, and the doctor just said the word and that was it. There was an instant contraction of the eyes, of the pupils. So what happens over time is that we become so akin to what is in that mass consciousness and what is in what we are storing in that storehouse that we have, that we think of as our mind. It's one mind. There's no separation of any of it. That we become so used to it that we don't question it. And this is one of the beautiful and powerful pieces of these teachings, is that we are open at the top. And the basis of these teachings is that we are taught to question everything. We're taught to question our beliefs, ideas, or the beliefs that we hold, the ideas that we hold, the thoughts that we choose to think. the reasons that we think we are doing things or not. We're taught to question all areas of our lives and of society and of culture. We're taught that it is good to question, to be that eternal question mark, as Ernest Holmes was known for. Myrna, hello. It's good to be here with you today. Good morning. I'm reminded of a Karen Drucker song, God is my source, God is my power, God gives me everything I need, so I give thanks for all my blessings. Oh, thank you so much for sharing this, Myrna. Myrna you were on the Women of Power Hour show last week. Great show. And I know this is true for you, because when I asked you what your superpower is, you said God. I'm like, yes, of course, God is your superpower. And yes, and the beauty of songs is that we can use these mantras, we can use these words to rehabitualize, repattern, to resource, to get closer to the truth of who we are, so that becomes our norm. That becomes our internal place that we live from, and that we choose from, and that we unravel from. So habits. Let's look at our habits as we come out of this cycle of 2022. I'm inviting us here to use this as a practice right now, as we come out of 2022 and we come into 2023. What are the habits that we can see where are the areas or the things that are happening in our lives that we think, okay, this isn't demonstrating the way that I would really choose it to be demonstrating if it was my conscious mind thinking and knowing it and wanting it and affirming it. So asking, where is it that I can change any habits that I may have around the way that I'm thinking and believing? And sometimes we have to change something physically in order to the cue that I talked about, to create a new cue, so that we are inspired to then think it differently. I'm going to get into this in a moment. An immense hug, matey. Yes, an immense hug of an immense light. Great to be here with you. Please share anything you'd like to share about habits and Ernest Holmes' teachings, and even about money, because we're going to talk about money in a moment. I'm just going to continue down with this paper here. So even Ernest Holmes says that, when we become disturbed inside about anything, then is the moment to be still and say peace. And when we are afraid of anything, then is the time to speak the word faith. When we become angry or listen to words of hatred, then is the moment to use the word love. It is not enough simply to do this once or twice, but each of us must discipline ourselves so that we persist in using these creative spiritual commands. We must do it over and over until what at first was a conscious and deliberate effort to speak the good word becomes so embodied in our minds, so completely accepted, that there is nothing within us that argues with the good we speak. You see, we are in this place of arguing within ourselves, aren't we? We're a house divided. Our conscious mind knows that it desires something. We desire something for our lives, and we don't see it happening. We don't see it moving. We don't feel the change and the transformation, and we wonder why. And yet this is an amazing mirror, because we can look at this and say, okay, This is me. This is me saying one thing and knowing another thing. And so I can do the work here to unravel these beliefs, to get closer to, to the divine, to the attributes of the divine. Note that he says peace and faith and love, and to state these words in the moment. So I'm asking you right now, what is there going on in your life? What's going on in my life right now that doesn't feel as if I really want it to be? And then not to ignore that, to actually affirm peace and faith and love, not to wait another 4 hours until we might be doing a spiritual mind treatment or a meditation or some visioning, to act in the now. And this is what I love about these teachings. They bring us, he's bringing us always to that knowing that there is only now. We can change it right now. But for so many of us, we even wait for our spiritual practice until a certain time of day. Hands up for that. If this is you, put this in the chat right now. I'm putting myself in the chat right now with a yes. So the new habit is to bring ourselves into the now and to respond in the now to what is going on, not to wait until when we have some time to do a spiritual mind treatment. Because what I love about this and this is the work of Neville Goddard, that we see what it is that we truly desire and we compound it into a feeling and a word and a feeling tone. And we embody that feeling, that we do that in visualizing. We embody the feeling of it and we claim it now. So we become the living, breathing beingness of what it is that we desire. It's not out there. And this, I believe, is the habit that we can embody and transform ourselves into and as. We can be the living, breathing habit for our lives, to shift this, to propel us into the quantum leap us into the new paradigm that we're seeking to be in for whatever area it is for our lives. White light universe, absolutely. Yes, white light universe. And it's a brand new day. Ain't no clouds hanging over me. Oh, I love that. Diego, hello. We praise the now and we bless our one. Absolutely, we do. Great to be here with you, Diego. So praising the now and blessing our one. And you know what I really love about this that's coming up for me is we also don't do a bypass here. So when we're claiming the now and love and peace and faith, it's also claiming the opportunity to do the forgiveness work where that's coming up, to do the empathy work where that's coming up, to knowing that we can make that shift and that change within ourselves without just denying, because we are sentient beings here and we're going to carry it in our cellular, it will embody in us until we let it be and do the work to release ourselves and set ourselves free from it. So it's all one big, beautiful opportunity for expansion and growth and transformation. And it's a beautiful learning. So we're commanding ourselves, and he gives and I'm going to read this out. So if you want to close your eyes, you can. Then we'll just move on to the money piece. But I think there is a spiritual command, Ernest Holmes states, to which I listen and to which I shall respond. From this moment, I shall let the words of love and life and peace speak clearly and with authority in my experience. No matter what happens around me, no matter what happens in the world, I know that this thing called life is forever proclaiming its own wholeness. It is saying to me life and love and peace. He goes on to say, I will listen to this still small voice as it speaks within, and I will proclaim its words of peace and life and love, so that they become life and power unto me. And because they become life and power unto me, they will bless those around me. They will bring happiness and confidence and joy and health to those to whom I speak my healing words. Just as the Father has given unto me of his life, so I may give life unto the world in which I live, to become a message of faith and hope and love. Omnipresent, nurturing, energy one. And isn't it so powerful? As Ernest Holmes is saying this, master of my sea, I am that. Yes. And as Ernest Holmes is saying this, he's also saying, I will become that message of faith and hope and love. So he's recognizing here that we are one. Of course, oneness prevails. We are deeply one, as is here written on the promos for this network. We are deeply one. And so whatever it is that we are embodying and embracing and transforming and knowing for our own lives, it's not our own life, it's one life. And so this is the ripple that we are rippling out as a massive wave into and as the infinite. And so we become responsible for what we are thinking and feeling and being, and for knowing that there is this process or this way that we can use the law, we can use God and be used by God at the same time. We are the microcosm of the macrocosm. So let's take a breath here and just move for 5 or 10 minutes. If there are any questions, then please keep putting them in. This is just wonderful to be here with each and every one. Because what I really would like to do is to come out of this for a moment, remove this and just take a breath. And then come into this piece here. I'm going to stop the screen there. I'm going to then come into this piece here where I'm going to, I think this is the one. Yeah. Because I think especially at this time of year, when there's a lot of pressure, there's much pressure to purchase, to buy, to have money, to create an amazing Christmas event. There's an internal pressure. And as I've talked of before, there is a pressure that we take on within race consciousness, the collective pressure, the social, the expected of how it should be and how we should show up as prosperous beings at this time of year. And it can cause a stress, it can cause upset, it can cause a lot of feelings of unworthiness and lack and not feeling enough and not being enough. And it can bring us to a place of not loving ourselves because we live into the social idea of how we need to be consumerizing and consuming all the stuff so that we are thought of as, or realized of as good enough. And so Ernest Holmes has written a paper on money here, as money as a spiritual idea. And I just wanted to share this because I think it could be just a reminder. He wrote this in 1918 in the Uplift magazine. So this was 1918 to 1951, 1828, 38, 48, 33 years before he wrote that article about habits. 33 years. And I just think it's so powerful that he starts this paper by saying, every time I talk on this subject, I begin with this. And I've heard him, this is in the textbook. I have no gold brick to sell. There is no get rich quick scheme. I have nothing at all to sell you. There are no secret doctrines that will tell you how to make $1 million in a month. While there is an exact science of gaining wealth, yet I will say in the beginning that possibly none of you will ever prove it. Nevertheless, I will say that it is an exact law, a scientific and unfailing law. There is a law of perfect supply. So here he is, 1918. And this is before the Science of Mind textbook has been published. And he's talking about this law that he knows that is exacting, and it is the macrocosm. Well, God is the macrocosm, and the law is operating in, as, and through everything, and we are the microcosm. And so we have use of this law. It is not out there somewhere, devoid of us, separate from us. It is our mind that is the one mind, that is the law. And so I ask you, what are you seeding into your mind, into the mind of the divine? What are the thoughts within you that are cultivating in the one as the creative law? Until we take responsibility for the habits, we cannot see the demonstration. So Ernest Holmes is continually prodding us and inviting us to be the change we wish to see. And this was Gandhi that said this. And yet Ernest knew that we are the ones that can be the change for our own world. Emma Curtis Hopkins states, our word is our world. That's really profound. And I think that summarizes these teachings in a really, really dynamic way. Our word is our world. Now, of course, back then in those times, that was written in, to say, all we need to do is speak it but the power, and everything will be different. And there's more to it, because it's the feeling, it's the intention, it's the expectation, it's the letting go. There are many pieces to it. And yet we're very, very, very powerful. And we don't realize it. And this teaching is a self-empowerment tool, practice, body of work. And when we choose to take on these teachings and to surrender to them, we can see our lives changing. Sometimes demonstrations happen quite quickly, and sometimes they take time. And yet I'm asking you, what are you prepared to invest in, to be involved in right now, in your own life, in the life that you are right now, so that this time next year, you can say, okay, I've set up this system of spiritual practice within my daily life. And it's going to outpicture and compound. As I said, I'm reading Atomic Habits by James Clear. As we do this daily, rather than having an end goal, just creating these microsystems for our days. And then over time, we see a 1% change, a difference, a transformation. So I'm asking you, what are you prepared to do now so that in a year, maybe I'll be here at this time next year and asking you this question? What did you set up for yourself to make a transformation for the habitual ways and patterns, to change them, to dissolve them, to add new thoughts in? What have you done? And so, what are you prepared to do right now? Because the choice that we make right now is going to have a ripple effect in the now, and it's eternal. So I'm just stopping to read this here. Our word is our weather. I love that. Oh, yes. I love that. Our world is, every word is a prayer. It's a seed that I'm putting into the field. Yes. And I really love it that you said our world is our weather, because I was speaking to a dear friend of mine. She's a practitioner here in the UK. Her name is Debbie Clement Large. And she teaches mindfulness, and she teaches that when we go into meditation, we can actually identify with our mood as if it's the weather. So if we're feeling sad, then it may be that, okay, let's say, okay, it's a damp day within ourselves. And that can be quite good, because then we can see like an image of the weather within our own mind, and we can bring the sun out, or we can just acknowledge that it's sadness and it's good, it's okay, because I'm just going to be with it and allow it to be, rather than trying to. But it's just that identification. Our word is our weather. That's what brought up for me. And Myrna, yes, wealth. Wealth. Here are me thinking I wrote because you said wealth. So our word is our wealth. I love that. Our word is our wealth also. If we are speaking words of lack, if we are speaking words of poverty, if we are speaking words of not enough, that we're not successful. And I said in the beginning, let's define what success really means for us. If success means that we are feeling so filled up and love filled with what we're doing and how we're being and what we're creating, and if that's the definition, or if the definition of success is, well, I haven't got enough, I haven't earned enough, I'm not bringing in enough money, then that's going to be a hard act to follow, because there we're setting ourselves up for living in a cycle of never really realizing the fullness of the potential of what is here and whose we are. So I realize that we have a few minutes left. Ernest Holmes here in this paper, by the way, both of these papers are in the Science of Mind archives. And they're very powerful. The archives is a fantastic resource for all of Ernest Holmes' work in so many different ways, whether it's teachings, whether it's books, papers, recordings, audio. They're all there in the archives. Reverend Kathy Mastroianni is the executive director, and she works really powerfully to bring these teachings into our lives. So this is quite a long paper, and he goes into the method of how we can use the law. And I'm not going to go very deep into this, because I know that we're coming to the end of this broadcast, and I hope that, or I affirm that in some way this has inspired you to think of wealth as a habit. Wealth is a habit because it's a state of mind. It's a state of mind, it's a state of heart, it's a state of realizing who and whose we are. So as we see God as our source and supply, and that this is infinite and eternal, and as we know and turn to the greater habit of connecting and communing with the divine throughout the day, in each and every moment, where we see that things aren't operating the way or demonstrating the way that we want them or would like them to demonstrate, that we turn to these words of principle and truth and know the truth in the moment, and that we remember who we are as the divine wealth, then we set a whole new ripple in motion. And that is felt. That is felt wide and far into and as the infinite. No, it's okay. Whatever you wrote was perfect. Whatever you wrote was perfect, Myrna. So I'm going to take this off now, and I'm going to do a spiritual mind treatment. And I'm going to do it a little bit differently. I'm going to read out something here. Maybe if I can. No, I thought there'd be a reading here, but there isn't. So I'm going to just to do a spiritual mind treatment as we come to the end of this our time together here. And you're welcome to join with this, which would be amazing, because I think it will just absolutely bring in this knowing of wealth, of money, of prosperity, and that in each and every moment we have this incredible opportunity to see ourselves as the infinite potential, even though we are the micro, not even though we are the micro, and yet we mimic this. And so we are the habit of God. We put on the God habit and we be it. So join me if this resonates with you and you are able to close your eyes for a few moments, if this feels good, and just settle into this. A lot of talking over the past hour. So let's open up to a greater knowing of who and whose we are, as I know I am the divine. And I know that there is one power presence. And that back of this is God, Goddess, Spirit. The thing itself, as Ernest Holmes knows and calls this, the ineffable essence, the allness, the greatness, Yahweh, Allah. This is God, Goddess. And it is the idea of all of life. It is the idea of everything. And it knows itself as it demonstrates itself into form. And this thing itself, the qualities of light and love, life, joy, beauty, harmony, prosperity, vitality, wisdom. It is omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent. And I know that God is here right now, expressing as me, Laura. I know that beyond the name and the human labeling of who I think I am, that the depths of me, the truth of me, is God, in, as, and through me, imbued in my heart. Goddess, God, love. And so I breathe into this and open my heart so fully, expand in my mental equivalent to knowing whose and who I am, realizing that the prosperity, the wealth, the richness, the money, the abundance of life are here and now. They always have been and always will be, as this is God, God is the infinite and eternal source and supply of everything. It is living and breathing and having its being through me and as me. And so as I open up and saying yes to being the greater expression of this, knowing that I am that habit, the God habit, as I choose to see and know God in everything, then I see my world as one of light and love and immense provision. I know that as I open my heart and my mind to this, open my inner eye, knowing that God is the source of everything, the supply of everything, everywhere, that I am not separate from this, and that each of us are absolutely uplifted in the knowing of God right now. As thoughts and feelings and words and attitudes, intentions and behaviors are dynamically aligned with those of light, love, life, joy, prosperity, beauty, infinite grace and wisdom, then worlds are changed. Knowing that there is enough for each and every individual right now. Knowing that whatever time of year it is, whatever the holiday season, for whatever faith, tradition, that there is a supply for each and every individual, every sentient being, every creature, every form of life. Just as the grass is always growing, just as the sun is coming out seemingly every day, just as the moon is here, even though it cannot always be seen at night, it is always here, as is God. And so, yes, God is my superpower, each of our superpowers. God is the power of prosperity and wealth. As changes are made in my mind and in my heart, I choose to see the divine in all and as all. And I know that this is love. I know there is a bank of love. And it is greatness. And it is mine. And it is each of ours right now, as it is God. And so knowing this, I am grateful. I am grateful for the knowing of God, for the abundance and prosperity. I'm grateful for the new thought seeded here and now. And I let this be as I step aside. God is all there is. Love is all there is. And so it is. Love, light, blessings, and joy, and full-on prosperity, and a golden bubble of peace for each and every one. Until next time, stay tuned in, though, to New Thought Media Network, because there are great programmings happening today and over the weekend. And we will be celebrating and recognizing the Jewish Festival of Light, Hanukkah. Every night, me and Reverend Michael Mangus will be on New Thought Media Network from Sunday night, tomorrow night, live for 20 minutes, lighting our menorahs. So if that's something that inspires you, come and join us. We'll be inviting on friends and come and light a menorah with us. That will be fun. That will be fun. Big blessings, light and love. and have an amazing, amazing, prosperous, prosperous rest of your day and life. Bye for now.